You are standing on the deck of HMS Victory, surrounded by thick cannon smoke off Trafalgar. The sea trembles as iron cannonballs rip through the masts and railings. Your hands clutch the rigging as you struggle to stay upright on the violently tilting deck. Cannons thunder from every direction, drowning out the cries of terrified sailors. Through the smoke, French and Spanish warships emerge like enormous floating fortresses.
It is October 21st, 1805.
The British fleet is sailing directly into the enemy formation with a strategy that seems almost suicidal. On the forward deck, the Admiral in full uniform calmly watches the battle. He has lost an arm and the sight in one eye, but he has never lost his determination. Suddenly, a musket shot cracks from the mast of the French warship alongside us.
The flagship endured, but the commander, wounded and weary, could stand no longer. Help the commander!
The sailors lift him quickly as the gun crews continue firing around them. You follow them below deck, where the oil lamps tremble with every blast. The battle raged above their heads, a deafening thunder that shook the very timbers of the ship. How could a man carrying so many wounds challenge the most powerful fleets in the world? Why were British captains willing to follow him into places where survival seemed impossible? The answer begins years earlier, on seas ruled by storms and cannon fire. From Cape St. Vincent to the Nile, every victory carried him closer to his destiny. Subscribe and step with us into the naval battles that changed the world. Now we turn back the clock to the moment when the legend truly began. You wake inside a cramped ship compartment, where the smell of tar mixes with seawater. Above you, pounding sailors' boots announce that an unusual morning is beginning. Out here, the sea holds her secrets close. We scanned the horizon. It is February 797, off the coast of Portugal. Britain is at war with revolutionary France, and the enemy alliance is growing larger. Spain has sided with France, bringing its powerful fleet into the conflict. Across British ports, people fear that the nation's trade could be cut off completely. Rumors of an invasion race through taverns and crowded marketplaces. Aboard the warships, every sailor knows that control of the sea means survival.
You serve aboard HMS Captain, a ship of the line armed with 74 guns.
The ship is not new, but her crew has been trained to fire fast and hit hard.
The North Atlantic in winter offered no quarter, but the Commodore was known for his audacity.
He is short and thin, usually appearing on deck with an intensely focused gaze.
The commander's philosophy is simple. Act before the opponent can understand what is happening.
That belief earns respect from his superiors, but it also makes many officers uneasy.
The flagship quarterdeck, a place of iron discipline. The Admiral tolerated no weakness.
He is searching for a way to stop the Spanish fleet from joining the French. If those forces unite, Britain's position in the Mediterranean could collapse. On the morning of February 14th, the lookout alarm suddenly echoes across the decks. From the masthead, a sailor shouts that countless sails are emerging through the mist. You run to the railing, but only dark shapes are visible along the horizon. One after another, the ships emerge, forming a line that seems to have no end. It is the Spanish fleet, with 27 massive ships of the... According to the instructions, I should use the explicit... The British have only 15 ships ready to fight the battle ahead. The difference in numbers leaves many sailors silent, though no one dares leave his post.
Jervis looks through his telescope and orders the fleet to hold the line of battle.
The British ships form one disciplined line, trusting order to overcome the enemy's greater numbers.
Fog and confused commands have divided the Spanish fleet into two separate groups.
Jervis immediately sends the British formation through the gap between them. Cannons open on both sides, and the air shakes like a giant storm. You duck as a cannonball tears through the sail directly above you. Sharp wood splinters burst across the deck, striking clothing and exposed skin. Gun smoke rolls across the deck, stinging your eyes and burning your throat.
HMS Captain stays in the line, firing broadside after broadside into the Spanish fleet.
But the commander sees a group of counterpart warships turning behind the formation. If they escape, they could regroup and turn victory into catastrophe.
Without waiting for another order, the commander directs the ship to turn out of line.
You feel the deck tilt sharply as the rudder swings the ship toward danger. Ahead, several larger Spanish ships are advancing with every gun ready.
Nelson's decision could save the fleet or destroy every sailor aboard this ship.
The Spanish cannons fire together, and HMS Captain shudders under the impact. The mast is damaged, rigging breaks apart, and heavy sails fall across the deck. The British gunners keep loading, pushing out, and firing in a desperate rhythm.
The commander stands inside the mist, directing the operations and encouraging dedicated sailors.
HMS Captain reaches San Nicolas, and the two ships collide with tremendous force.
The commander signals and orders the crew to prepare for the crossing. You climb over the railing and step onto the enemy deck through smoke and shouting.
The boarding fight erupts in chaos with pistols, swords, musket stocks, and raw strength. The Spanish crew resists fiercely, but step by step, they are forced back. As San Nicolas surrenders, another Spanish warship, San Josef, comes alongside. The commander immediately turns the captured deck into a bridge toward the second ship.
Without a moment of rest, you climb with the others and charge onto San Josef. Spanish officers stare in disbelief as British sailors appear from their own Allied ship.
After a short but fierce defense, the Spanish flag is finally pulled down.
Two powerful Spanish ships have been taken in an attack no one had planned.
As the cannon fire fades, you look around and see a deck buried beneath wreckage. British fleet has won, capturing several warships despite being badly outnumbered. The commander walks among the survivors, knowing that his disobedience has already become legend. The recent victory turns him from a daring captain into a symbol of hope. But in the eastern Mediterranean, a more dangerous enemy is preparing a vast expedition.
After the previous campaign, the commander continued serving despite sustaining a severe injury.
Before the wound had fully healed, he returned to sea as Europe continued to descend into war.
The nation now places its confidence in the young general.
Napoleon prepares an enormous expedition, but its true destination is kept secret.
The Naval Command gives the Admiral one mission: find the opposing fleet and neutralize it.
You stand on the deck of HMS Vanguard, watching the Mediterranean rise and fall beneath your feet. A violent storm damages the flagship, making the search even more difficult.
For weeks, the British fleet searches among islands and empty horizons without success.
The British pass Alexandria before the French arrive, then turn away in frustration.
At last, merchants report that the French expedition has landed in Egypt.
On the afternoon of August 1st, 1798, the lookout suddenly raises the alarm. From the masthead, you see the French fleet anchored inside Aboukir Bay. 13 French ships of the line form a long defensive line near the shallow water.
The French commanders believe the shoreline protects one entire side of their formation. The sun is setting, but the commander refuses to wait until morning.
The battle order moves from ship to ship, and the gun crews race to their stations. HMS Goliath leads the attack and slips through the gap between the French fleet and the shore.
You hear the leadsman calling depths as the ship glides over the hidden shallows. By the mark! 5!
Other British ships follow, trapping the leading French vessels between two lines of fire. The guns open at close range, and the entire bay begins to tremble beneath the bombardment. Night covers the sea, and only bursts of fire reveal the masts and rigging around you. At the center of the French line, the flagship L'Orient suddenly begins to burn. The flames reach the powder magazine, and the explosion turns the night into daylight. The shockwave breaks windows, and the guns fall silent for several stunned minutes. When dawn arrives, many French ships are blackened, disabled, or flying surrender signals. 11 of the 13 French ships of the line have been captured or destroyed. More than 200 British sailors are dead, while French losses reach into the thousands. The army is now isolated, without a safe route for supplies by sea. The commander is injured, yet he continues commanding among the shattered decks. The victory of the Nile turns Nelson into a hero praised across Europe.
3 years later, you sail with the commander again, this time into the freezing waters of the north. Russia, Denmark, Sweden, and Prussia have formed the League of Armed Neutrality. These nations reject Britain's claimed right to search neutral ships at sea. Britain fears that timber, hemp, tar, and other naval supplies will be cut off.
A powerful fleet enters the northern waters under the cautious senior admiral.
The Vice Admiral is second in command, but he continues pressing for an immediate and decisive engagement. You stand aboard HMS Elephant and see the towers of Copenhagen rising in the distance.
Between the fleets lie narrow channels, hidden shoals, and currents that can trap a ship.
The Danes have shifted the navigation markers, making the approach even more dangerous. In darkness, small boats quietly measure the depth and mark a route for the attack.
On the morning of April 2nd, 1801, the attack signal is raised. Nelson leads the squadron along a defensive line of warships, floating batteries, and coastal guns.
3 British ships strike the shoals before reaching position, reducing Nelson's strength. From the shore and anchored defenses, defensive batteries begin firing toward the approaching fleet. HMS Elephant drops anchor near the Danish line and opens fire with every available gun. The range is so close that every explosion strikes through the hull and into your chest. Smoke hides the signal flags and makes it almost impossible to understand the entire battle. From the rear, Parker sees the stranded ships and fears that Nelson is being defeated. He raises the signal, ordering Nelson to stop the battle and retreat. The commander raises the telescope to his covered eye and declares that he cannot see the signal.
The captains nearest Nelson understand him and continue fighting.
For hours, both sides keep firing until entire sections of the Danish line fall quiet.
The commander sends a warning that he will continue neutralizing every position that refuses to yield.
The Danes agree to a truce, allowing both fleets to save lives and open negotiations. More than 250 British sailors are killed, while Danish casualties reach about 1,800. The armistice forces Denmark to step away from the alliance against Britain.
The death of Tsar Paul in Russia soon causes the armed alliance to weaken.
Britain protects its Baltic trade and preserves the materials needed to keep its fleet at sea. The engagement proves that the commander will defy an order when he believes the objective can still be achieved. But to the south, the opposing commander is gathering strength for the decisive confrontation. In the autumn of 1805, Europe stands on the edge of a decisive war. Napoleon has built a powerful empire, while Britain still depends on the sea to survive. Along the French coast, enormous camps have been prepared for the invasion of Britain. To open the way across the English Channel, Napoleon must defeat the British fleet. The Allied fleets are gathered at the harbor under their commander. Outside the harbor, the commander directs the fleet and watches every movement. You stand on the deck of HMS Victory as the Atlantic wind moves through the sails. Every sailor knows the coming battle may decide the future of home.
The commander does not want a long parallel engagement fought by traditional naval rules.
He plans to divide the fleet into 2 columns and drive directly through the opposing line.
The leading ships will face concentrated enemy fire before they can fight back.
But once the Allied line is broken, each isolated section can be destroyed.
The commander explains the plan, then gives his captains freedom to act when the signals disappear.
Years of training, battle, and trust allow the British captains to understand one another. On October 20th, the Allied fleet sails out of Cadiz and into the Atlantic. The next morning, a shout from the masthead announces sails in the distance. You climb onto the deck and see the enemy formation stretching across the horizon.
33 French and Spanish ships face only 27 British ships.
Villeneuve orders the fleet back toward Cadiz, bending the Allied line into confusion. The light wind slows every ship and stretches the waiting into unbearable tension. The commander wears his full dress uniform, with every decoration displayed across his chest. Some officers fear that his uniform will make him highly visible to the opposing side. The commander refuses to hide his rank because he wants every sailor to see their leader. Before battle, he sends a signal reminding every man to do his duty. Cheers roll across the decks, then vanish as every crew returns to silence.
The southern column under Collingwood advances faster toward the enemy rear. HMS Royal Sovereign breaks through the line and is immediately surrounded. To the north, HMS Victory leads Nelson's column toward the enemy center.
For nearly an hour, Victory cannot return fire while enemy guns strike the ship. Cannonballs rip through sails, shatter rigging, and throw wooden splinters across the deck.
You crouch behind the railing, then rise to pull a wounded sailor out of danger.
The sailors remain at their stations, waiting for the moment when the ship can answer. Victory finally crosses behind Bucentaur, the flagship of Admiral Villeneuve. A close-range broadside crashes through the stern and devastates the French flagship.
Victory moves forward and becomes locked against Redoutable inside a wall of smoke.
The ships are so close that sailors can throw objects from one deck to the other.
French marksmen fire from the rigging as British Marines shoot back through the smoke. On the quarterdeck, the commander walks beside his officer and watches the battle unfold.
A sudden blow strikes the commander, shaking the command of the fleet.
He falls to the deck and immediately knows that the wound cannot be survived. The sailors cover his face so the crew will not realize that their commander has fallen.
You follow as the commander is carried below, while the guns continue shaking the ship.
In the cramped lower deck, the surgeon confirms that the wound is fatal.
The commander keeps asking for news while the struggle above remains undecided. Above deck, the two British columns have cut the Allied fleet into separate pieces. The British captains act on their own, concentrating their guns against isolated enemies.
Redoutable resists with extraordinary determination, but is finally surrounded and forced to surrender. The flagship is also captured, and their commander is taken into custody. Several ships from the Allied front escape the battle and turn back toward Cadiz. By late afternoon, the cannon fire fades and surrender flags appear across the sea.
The officer returns below and tells the commander that the fleet has won completely. Commander, the fleet has won a complete victory.
The commander hears the news.
I ask for the fleet to anchor and peacefully concludes his final duty.
Nearly 406 British sailors are dead, and more than 1,200 are wounded. The Allied fleet loses more than 4,000 dead, with thousands more wounded or captured.
In the following days, a violent storm destroys or grounds many captured ships. Altogether, the Allied fleet loses about 22 ships, captured or destroyed.
The Royal Navy loses no ship in the battle, though many are badly damaged.
Trafalgar does not defeat Napoleon, but it ends his hope of controlling the seas around Britain. The victory secures British command of the sea for the rest of the war. Nelson saved his fleet and his country, but he never lived to see his legacy. Nelson's battles grew from a wider struggle to control the oceans. Britain survived through maritime trade, while France sought to destroy that lifeline. Spain and the Baltic powers made the balance of naval power even more dangerous. Inside that crisis, the commander rose through speed, daring, and the ability to judge a moment. At Cape St. Vincent, he proved that individual initiative could overturn impossible odds. That victory turned a daring captain into a new symbol of naval power. At the Nile, he destroyed most of the fleet supporting the French expedition to Egypt. Napoleon still won battles on land, but his army was isolated from home. The result strengthened Britain and changed the balance of power throughout the Mediterranean. At the coastal battle, the commander faced fortresses, shallow water, and a direct order to withdraw. His decision to continue fighting helped break the threat from the Baltic Alliance. Yet the battle also revealed the narrow line between genius and disobedience. Trafalgar became the final test of everything Nelson believed about battle. Two British columns cut through the Allied line and turned superior numbers into a burden.
Independent captains, skilled gunners, and disciplined sailors completed the plan.
Nelson did not win alone, even though his name became the symbol of the battle. Napoleon still dominated the continent, but he could not bring Britain to its knees. Command of the sea allowed Britain to expand its trade, military power, and global empire. Nelson's legacy reminds us that history can change direction in only a few decisive minutes.